Hello, boys and girls. This is Mrs. Wingervasio, and today we're going to be covering Chapter 2, Lesson 2.2, Adding Rational Numbers. Don't forget, for our note setup, we need to make sure that you have the lesson number and the title, and make sure you always highlight the lesson number and the title, and today's date. Okay? As a reminder, also, don't forget to copy down all the notes that you see in the video today for full credit. All right, the first thing we're going to talk about are the key ideas for this lesson. So the main idea for this lesson today is that we're going to be adding rational numbers. So to add a rational number, you need to basically use the same rules you would for integers. So I have here a fraction. It says here -1/3 plus 1/6. We're going to be using the integer rules we learned in the last chapter to solve for this fraction. Now, also, I want you to point out something to you in this fraction. Notice that the denominator, the bottom fraction number, is not the same. So what we're going to need to do in this chapter, in this lesson, is we need to make sure that before we add, we need to see that do they have the same denominators. And if they don't, we need to convert them, to change them, and to make sure they have the same denominator. And I'm going to show you that in our video today in the lesson. So let's go ahead and begin. Our first example, I have 3. I'm going to show you how to add fractions in 3 different ways. Now, in my first example, I have the fractions here. They all have the same denominator, both of them. So it's very simple to add a fraction. All you need to do when they have the same denominator is add the numerator. So you're just going to take 1 plus 2. So 1 plus 2 will be 3. So I'm going to put 3 on top. And since the denominator is 7, I'm just going to keep it as 7. So the answer for A would be 3 over 7. Very simple if the denominators are the same. Just take a look at the next one. B, the denominators are the same. So we're going to go ahead and use the same denominator. But this time I noticed that we have an integer of a -4 and an integer of a +1. So in this case, we can't just go 4 plus 1. We want to solve this according to the integer rule. So it's basically saying this is -4 plus 1. So what I like for you to do for your homework, and it's going to make it a lot easier for you to see, is to write what it's asking you to do for the numerator. It's asking you to do -4 plus 1. If you write it out like this, you will not make mistakes on solving this fraction. If you just do it in your head, sometimes students will do this as -4 plus 1 is 5, and it's not 5. So if you look at the signs when you're adding, if the signs are different, you subtract. And notice this is a negative, this is a positive, so 4 subtract 1 is 3. And then you would carry the sign of the larger number, which is -4. So the answer is -3 on top, and the denominator at the bottom is the same, so we'll just keep it as 5. So remember, we still use the rules for integers in our fractions for this lesson. Very important you know your integer rules. If you need a review, feel free to watch the old videos in my last chapter, or look back to your notes for the rules. Okay? All right, now in our next example, we have here C. The denominators are not the same. We have a 3 and a 6. So notice they are not the same. So what we're going to have to do now is we have to make sure we can find a denominator they have in common. So to do that, we will find what is called the LCD. It stands for lowest common denominator. Now, you might remember in your 6th grade or 5th grade or even 4th grade class, you might have made a chart that looked like this with a 3 and a 6. And then you had to find their multiples for each one. So 3 times 1 is 3. Multiple means times. 3 times 2 is 6. And 3 times 3 is 9. And then 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. And the reason why I stopped is because I noticed that they had something in common right here. The first number they have in common, that's your LCD. So since that's their common number 6, I will be using that number to use for their denominator. So I'm going to go ahead and put 6 here and 6 here and a bar over for my fraction and a positive sign. Notice when I'm solving my fractions, I always show my work below. It's a lot easier when you show it below because you can see what you're doing versus across. And this is what I mean. Now, the next step, what you're going to do is you're going to ask yourself, 3 times what gave me 6? So I noticed that 3 times 2 gave me 6. So I'm going to do 3 times 2 right here. 3 times 2 is 6. So now, when we're multiplying our fractions, whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So since we did 2 times 3 here, we're going to do 2 times 8. But the problem is, this is just not any 8. It's actually a -8. So we're going to have to do 2 times -8. What is 2 times -8? Well, 2 times -8 is -16, so I'll put that right here. And then the next one over here we're going to do, we're going to ask ourselves 6 times what is 6? So 6 times, it seems like 1. 6 times 1 is 6, so that's how you got the bottom denominator. And then whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So now 5 times 1 gives me the numerator of 5 on top here. So what we did is we chose our LCD to get the common denominator to be the same. Then we had to solve to change the numerator to make sure that it's accurate now. Now we're ready to go ahead and complete this problem. Just like we did on top, we check to see if the denominators are the same. Now that they are, we can go ahead and use 6 as our denominator. And then now do negative 16 plus 5. So negative 16 plus 5. Notice I'm not afraid to show many steps, so this is my third step. My next step is to look at the problem and see if the signs are the same when I'm adding. Follow the integer rules. If the signs are the same, I'm just going to add and carry the sign. But if the signs are different, I'm going to subtract. In this case, they're different. So I'm going to subtract 16 from 5, which is 11. And 11 over 6 would be almost my answer. I noticed that I forgot a negative here because the signs, the number of 16 is bigger, so I'm going to put a negative here. Now this is the answer. Now sometimes on my test though, you need to be careful. I may ask for a mixed number. Now this is an improper because the top is bigger than the bottom. Now if I ask for a mixed number, all you need to do is divide. Top goes in, bottom goes out. So 11 over 6 would be 6 times 1, or 6 times what is 11? 1, 6 here, and then we have a remainder of 5. So my answer would be 1 and 5, 6, negative. So this would be my answer. This answer is the same as negative 11 over 6. So these two are the same answer. It's just one is an improper and one is a mix. Okay, so if there's anything in this example that you didn't understand, whether it's the same denominator or not the same denominator, feel free to press pause and replay again. All right, in our next example now, what we have to do is we need to add the decimals. So to add the decimals, what we're going to do is we're going to line them up in my first example. So all I'm going to do is take 3.2 and line it up with my 5.75. Now, if you want, you could have written 5.75 first and 3.2 on the bottom, but I just happened to wrote it this way, so I'm going to go ahead and continue. Now, since we're adding decimals, we always want to line up the decimals exactly where they're at, and notice I lined them up. If you don't, you might add the numbers in the different values, and it's going to give you the wrong answer. Now, since I don't have a number here, I'm going to go ahead and put a 0 as my placeholder, and then I'm going to go ahead and add. 0 plus 5 is 5. 7 plus 2 is 9. And 5 plus 3 is 8. So my answer is 8.95. Notice I didn't add it across because it's a lot difficult. So if it's easier, like for me, I added it straight down. So you might want to write your problems like this for homework tonight. Okay? Now, in our next one, we're adding again, but do you notice this time we are adding numbers with the same signs, but they're negatives. So this time I'm just going to take 2.14. And since they're both negatives, that's why I'm adding it. We're going to add it to 4.56. And then now, once we add it, we're going to get 6 plus 4 is 10. And then carry the 1. 5 plus 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7. And 4 plus 2 is 6. Now, since they both have a negative, you have to carry the sign of the signs that they have. So if the signs are the same, add and carry the sign. So there's A, there's B. They're very similar, but the one is positive here for both of the numbers. One is negative for both of the numbers. And all I did was add them. Now, when you get to C, it's a little bit different because in C, if you notice, the signs are different. These were the same. These were the same. This is different now. One's a negative and one's a positive. So what we're going to have to do here is we're not going to just add them. We need to, if the signs are different, it says in addition, we need to subtract. So even though it says to add, we're actually going to subtract. So remember, very important you know your integer rules. If you don't, please review them. 7.62 subtract 4.05. And then we're going to go ahead and subtract that. Can't subtract 2 from 5, so borrow. That's going to be 5. That's going to be 12. 12 minus 5 is 7. 5 minus 0 is 5. And then 7 minus 4 is 3. Now, I have a number of 3.57, but I need to look to see which number was bigger. Since 7.62 is bigger, I know my answer is going to be a positive. So it's very important you look to see which one's bigger in order to tell you if the signs are positive or negative. Okay? All right. So this was the decimal numbers that we were adding. The first one was the fraction. Now, I'd like for you to do for your homework tonight is take out a piece of paper and start on your own problems 1 through 6. Be careful if the fractions don't have the same denominator, and be careful if the decimals are different. One is a positive and one's a negative. Also, I didn't give you an example in the video for this one, but be careful. If you get a mixed number, you need to make sure you change it into improper before you can add it. Okay? So go ahead and try these problems. If you still have questions, please make a mark on which ones you have, and I will answer them tomorrow. All right. Example 3. In example 3, you're given an expression, and what we're going to do in this expression is we're going to plug in what they gave us. So we notice that they gave us an x of 1/4, so 2 times 1/4, and then we're going to close our parentheses, plus y. Y was going to, or is, -3/2, so I'm going to put -3/2. So it looks like it's a little bit difficult to do, but it's really not. So what we're going to do is we're going to solve this according to PEMDAS first. So in PEMDAS, it says we multiply first before we add. So we're going to multiply 2 times 1/4. Now, since 2 is not a fraction, I'm just going to put a 1 underneath as we learn in 2.1. Anytime you want to make a number a fraction, put it under 1. And now we're going to go ahead and multiply this. So 2 times 1 is going to be 2. And 1 times 4 is going to be 4. Remember, when you multiply fractions, you just multiply straight across. Now we're going to add this to -3/2. And now this will be our new problem. Now, in order to add this, we need to make sure they have the same denominators. And I notice they don't. One is a 4, one's a 2. So I need to think of a number that they both have in common. That's the lowest common denominator. Now, if you're somebody like me that does not need to make the chart, don't make the chart. But if you need the chart, here's the chart. Do it for your homework. That way you can see what the LCD is. Okay? So we're going to figure out what the LCD is by making this chart so you can see. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 3, or 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 8. I'm sorry, 2 times 3 is 6. Sorry, class. 2 times 3 is 6. I'm going to stop right there. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, stopped right there because I noticed 4 and 4 is what they have in common first. Remember, the first number they have in common is their LCD. So I'm going to use 4 as their common denominator. So I'm going to put 4 here and 4 here. So we're going to ask ourselves 4 times what was 4? So 4 times 1. So 1 times 4 was 4 down here. So whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So 1 times 2 is 2. So what do you do here? 2 times what is 4? 2 times 2. So whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. Now for this one, be careful because this one's actually a negative. So be careful. So we have -3 times 2 will be -6. Now, what operation were we doing? Oftentimes students forget to put down the operation, so make sure you always put it down so you can see. Now, to finish off this problem, this is going to look like this. It's going to say 2 plus -6 over 4. It helps if you rewrite the problem so that way you know what you are working with and solving. So now if I look at it, this is a positive, this is a negative. Signs are different, so I'm going to subtract. Once I subtract 6 from 2, I get 4. Now the bigger number is 6, so I'm going to put a negative here. And then now the bottom denominator is the same, so I'm just going to keep it as 4. Now this is the answer, but a better answer I would like for you to have is a reduced answer. So 4 divided by 4 is actually 1. And since it's a negative divided by positive, it's a -1. So this is a better answer than this. Okay, so make sure you have your fractions always reduced for your homework and also the test. All right. In our last example, it's a story problem. It's talking about a table that shows annual profits of a financial company from 2008 to 2012. It tells you their represents their gains and their loss. The gains are basically the positives and the loss are basically the negatives. Which statement describes the profit over 5 years? So this is 5 years. We need to know their profit. So in order to know what their profit is, we're going to have to add all the years of the profits they made. So I'm going to list the numbers, -1.7. Then I'm going to put plus -4.75. So I'm just listing the numbers that are given each year. So -1.7, -4.75, those are the losses. Plus the next year, 1.7, they had a gain. Plus the next year, 0.85, they had a gain. Plus the next year of an 3.6, they had a gain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add all of these up. And as you recall in our previous chapter or in our previous assignments, you can't add numbers all at once. So you're going to do them 2 at a time. So I'm going to take 2 at a time and I'm going to add them up. So I'm going to take these 2 and I'm going to go ahead and add it up. But I need to see if they have the same signs or different signs. I notice this is a negative, and I also know this is a negative. So since the signs are the same, it's so much easier to solve. We're going to go ahead and just add them. So 4.75 plus 1.7, and then we're going to add that up. And once you add that up, you notice that the signs are the same. So if the signs are the same, what we're going to do is we're just going to carry the sign that they have. So I'm adding that up, and I get 6.45. 6.45. Next, the number we have is going to be plus 1.7. Now I notice, sorry, there's our negative. This one's a negative, but this one's a positive. So what I'm going to have to do in this one is I have to basically subtract. So I'm going to take 6.45 negative, or 6.45, and I have to subtract it from 1.7. And the reason why I'm subtracting is it's because this is a negative and this is a positive. Signs are different. So 6.45 subtract 1.7 will be 4.75. So I have 4.75 for my next one, 4.75. And it's going to be a negative because the bigger number here tells me the sign. Now I'm done with this one. I'm done with this one. I'm done with this one. So I'm going to just show you that I'm done with that. The next number we have is going to be plus 0.85. Now, again, the signs are different. One's a negative, one's a positive. So what I have to do this time again is subtract. So I'm going to take my 4.75 and I'm going to subtract it from 0.85. Notice I'm not afraid to show all my work. So please make sure you show all your work on your homework. I'm going to expect there's a lot of work for your homework when I check. So 4.75 minus 0.85 gives you a total of 3.9. So I have 3.9. Now, the signs are different. The bigger number tells me the sign, so I know this is going to be a negative 3.9. So now my last total that I have is going to be a 3.6. I'm going to drop that down here. And I'm just going to put it right here so you can see. Plus 3.6. One more time, I have to see, are the signs the same? This one and this one, they're not. So I'm going to have to subtract it. So I'm going to take 3.9 and subtract it from 3.6. And I get the total of, I get a total of 0.3. Now you can have 0.3 or 0.3, it's the same answer, but you need to make sure if you have the right sign. This is a smaller number, this is a bigger number, so it's a negative 0.3. So I found my answer. It's a negative. So did we have a gain or did we have a loss? We actually had a loss. So we can't say A is the answer because that's a gain. We can't say B is the answer because that's a gain. So between C and D, this is talking in millions, but we've had this in billions. So 0.3 was negative 0.3 in decimal form is really D, a loss of 300 million. 0.3 is actually 300 million. Okay, so our answer would be D. That's going to be 300 million is our loss. Now, if you didn't understand why or how we got D, that's okay. The most important part that I am more concerned about is, did you understand the steps on how we added these decimals? Okay. All right. Any questions you have from this video, feel free to ask me tomorrow. Make a mark on the ones that you're not sure about for homework, and I will be more than happy to answer them. So for your homework, please continue on the same page of the one that you did on your own. You have problems 7, 8, and 9 to complete. And one more thing you need to do for me before your homework is done is to answer the exit ticket on the same page as on your own. And then any questions again, if you have them, please ask me tomorrow. And don't forget, video notes you should have in your notebook on your own and exit ticket on the same paper. Okay, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.